Good afternoon and welcome to this episode of Eryri National Park Podcast. And today we are joined here by Colin White and Lloyd at Arthog Village Hall. So I'm Gwenno and I'm the Community Engagement Officer for Eryri National Park. And hopefully in this episode what we want to do today is discuss some of the most influential people who have been born or who have lived in Arthog. And from the discussions that we've had prior to this podcast, we've realised there are many individuals and they've done some amazing things, and you know quite a lot about them from them perhaps being in your family or that you've worked for some of these people. So shall we start then, Colin, with you? And you know quite a lot about Viscountess Joan Chetwynd, so perhaps how you know her and what she was famous for.
Well, I lived here in the early 50s, and she lived in Tinnacoed, a large house in the village. I lived in a large house as well, Arthog Hall, and every now and then she would phone up and say, "Would you be a dear? My hydroelectric is blocked. Would you come and get the..." And usually be on a stormy night, and it was quite a job. I know she always gave me ½ a crown for everything I did. It was always ½ a crown, which was big money in those days. You could have a good night out in those days on it. And she was born in India.
Okay.
I think Jaipur, or her father was a commissioner there, regional commissioner for the Punjab. So he was God, if you like, of the Punjab. So she was a woman of her age, a Victorian woman, of course, and that's how she was. And she knew her place, and she made sure that everybody else knew their place. She didn't start off as Viscountess Joan Chetwynd. She married a Mr. Finlay, who I believe was a tobacco magnate in the early part of the last century, and she had a son with him, Tony, who was very nice. He was in the army, but they didn't get on, and she had a divorce, and she met Viscount Chetwynd, whom she married, don't know when, but he was interested in motor racing, and he got her to join him, and that's how. And she raced in Brooklands, and I think she had a world speed record for a woman in about 1925 or whatever, in I think a Lee Francis car. You don't see these days, of course. She had an Aston Martin while she was here. Wow. Which I cleaned every now and then, again for ½ a crown. And sometimes I'd go with her to Ludlow in the Aston Martin, and because she didn't like coming back in the dark on her own. She had a daughter lived nearby, and we used to go to the Ludlow Castle to some of the Shakespearean stuff there, and then have a meal in the evening in the Feathers in Ludlow, famous place in its day. And then come back, and she would, I suppose, house company for her on the way back in the dark. And I also did other odd jobs around the house, clearing some of the cellars out, oiling the hydroelectric when she was away. I'd fix the hydroelectric for her, and which heated the house, and she had an old-fashioned washing machine and so on. Yeah.
Is she well known in Arthog now? Do lots of people still remember
her? They know the name, yes, because she had quite a presence about her.
I'm sure she did.
She looked like Queen Victoria as well as acted like her, which she was in the yes. And she had gardens at the bottom of the hill, Arthog Hill.
Okay. And
she employed a gardener there, and he would supply the vegetables. And at one time, they had a first-class gardener who used to pollinate the plants with a rabbit's tail.
Wow.
And they grew peaches on the wall and pineapples and so on in the heated glass houses. Yes. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you for sharing a little bit about Joan. And I know she is one of the people that you'd like to include in here at the Arthog Village Hall.
Because of her motor races. She also rallied in Monte Carlo rallies and Le Mans and 24-hour races.
Quite unusual for a female in her day.
And then I think during the war she's in the Army, or the Women's Royal Air Force. And I'm not sure she didn't deliver the planes, from the manufacturers to the various bases throughout Britain, flying them. So she was quite a character.
She was, by the sounds of it. Thank you.
And she did quite a lot with the RSPCA.
Oh, okay.
I think she was the local president or something like that. And
she was a busy lady.
Yeah.
Very busy.
Yeah, she had horses and Welsh mountain ponies. She had a lovely Palomino pony. Yeah.
If I could just come in here, you mentioned the garden. This was a wall garden, Victorian wall garden. My father worked there as a young boy. There were 4 gardens there. And the old, as you rightly mentioned, Mr. Pierce, he was the head gardener.
Yeah.
And he'd been a head gardener in one of the great houses in England prior to coming here. He was here for 30 years. And you can tell why he was held in great esteem, because you've got Lady Chatwin there, buried, and her father.
Yeah.
Next to him is the old gardener and his wife.
Wow.
In the church.
Yeah.
So they saved a space for them there.
So, I mean, so there was the hierarchy.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so on that, she was divorced again from the Viscount Chatwin.
But they had no idea as to our Welsh traditions here, because I was brought up in Arthog, as you know, and my brother and I, we used to go on New Year's Day. We went around all the houses here, and we used to go held clinic.
Yeah.
Right? So I went up there with my brother, you see.
Yeah.
And knocked on the door. And then she had a friend then called Captain Cutbill. And he came to the door. And we were trying to explain to him, what we were about.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the foggiest to say. So he came to the conclusion in the end that we were after money, obviously. So I remember he said to me, is your father out of work or something? He thought I was begging.
He was quite a character, old Captain Cutbill.
Did he understand in the end?
They didn't know, like everybody else. Actually, we used to go to some houses and they'd have apples and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Ready to
money,
give you.
and it was all ready.
Yeah.
The locals had got it ready for all the kids.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're no clueless up there.
No.
Oh, yeah. How interesting.
He used to go around with a cigarette in a holder, bit of style,
I know.
and a gin in the other hand. And
Yeah.
He had style, and a cravat. He was the boyfriend.
Okay,
He was the pal.
It's an absolutely
Nice chap.
fabulous house.
I'm sure I'd like to go and visit it.
Yeah.
Coloured marble fireplaces.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's all panelled.
Beautiful.
And then the panels that close on the windows as well at night.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I remember in the dining room there was a cup, this World Speed cup.
Oh, yeah.
On the sideboard in the dining room.
Wow.
Where it is now, God knows.
I don't think many people I certainly didn't know nothing about that.
Yeah.
Some of the locals, I don't think they knew that she was that famous.
Yeah. Well, she used to. I tell her she confided me. I remember she said she came with Daddy in about 1908, and they saw Tinnacoid for sale in an estate agent in Barmouth. So they came over on the ferry and went up to the hall. And there's some lovely, as you enter the hall, there's some lovely acoustic tiles, beautiful tiles. Oh, she said, Daddy, these are lovely. Will you buy it for me? Of course I will, he said.
And that
was
that.
Yeah, that was that, yeah, and they did.
Yeah.
And they bought it. He was a Casson.
Wow.
Yeah, the Casson family.
Terry, do you mind if I move on to somebody, someone who is in your family, Henry Lloyd ap Hefin, and if you'd share a little bit with us, for anybody who wouldn't know what he's famous for.
Well, Henry Lloyd ap Hefin, that was his Pardic name. He was my grandfather's elder brother, and he was a printer by trade. I mean, he was born in East Lladre, that's the next hamlet down.
Yes.
And then he came up here and he lived at a place called Merddin, just up the road from there, 10 minutes from here. He was there for 10 years. And there is a plaque on the house centre, by the way.
Oh, good.
I don't know who put it there. But
I think the owners put it there, didn't they?
it could have been.
Yeah.
Anyway, he did a 7-year apprenticeship in the Dydd Printers in Dolgalla, and he worked there for several years. And eventually he moved down to Aberdare in South Wales, and he worked in the printing works. Then eventually He had his own business for years. He was married. He had I think he had 4 or 5 children. Only 2 survived. I know two daughters. I knew one of them. And he was a poet, and he wrote a number of books. The one that's probably the most well known around here, this is the one that relates to his 2 grandmothers. And that's really interesting, because then you get to really know what was happening in Dolgelly 150 years ago. Yes. That was when all the fellmongeries and woolen mills were all going. And funnily enough, my great-great-grandfather, he used to run one of those mills. And I only found that out the other day because there's a book that's been newly published now about it.
Can you remember the name?
They mentioned this guy who was called David Lloyd. And that's who he was. Yeah. So I had to buy the book. It cost me 17 quid.
It was worth it. What was the name of the book? Do you remember?
Great-granddad. Yeah. So then, and then he was also a lay preacher, because he used to come up here for his annual holiday. And then he used to visit, some of the chapels and things like that. But he's written a lot of poetry and produced quite a few books. I haven't got any of them, unfortunately. No. But I know of some of his work. I mean, he had this one bit he just looked a bit and he got a couplet there,
Yeah.
And he did one that says, "Ddo fydd y ffrind mawrach, I weld paradwys byd, ac I drisgawr y mynydd de, ac I drisgawr a'i gedern, yn gwylio brof yn cryd."
Oh, lovely. And they...
But there was, they'll be available in the National Library.
Yeah. He wrote one about the autumn leaves, Terry, didn't he?
Oh, yes.
It's
apparently, he did an England, which he won in the National Eisteddfod, I think in 1902. And that's to the autumn leaves. And that's considered one of the greatest things in the Welsh language.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to have to look that up.
Am ryliw marwolaeth Rhyw y dail yn marw.
Yeah.
That's a different view of autumn, isn't it?
Yes,
autumn colours.
Yeah.
It really is a colour of death.
Dwi'n cofio wedi, mae'n cychwyn tlws ei tŵ liaws tawel, gemau teg, rhywbeth gwybod ail ac awel. Ond dwi'n cofio o gyd.
Oh, lovely. I can look that up to see if I can find it.
Yeah.
But, I get the most pleasure without any doubt just reading that book about the 2 grandmothers. So it gives you such an insight. And of course, how hard a life it was. Because one of my grandmothers, her husband, he worked in the quarry in Corris. And a rock fell down on him, and he died anyway. But they brought him home on a stretcher. Yeah. And she was left with 9 children. Yeah. And there was no money to be had from anywhere at all in those days. And she ended up selling firewood and
doing whatever she could,
stuff like that, just to eke some sort of a living. Yeah.
Well, my grandparents left the area and walked down to South Wales to work in the mines, only to be killed in the mines.
There was a certain amount of money allowed. They called it the plwy.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, to qualify for that, some official came around and they had nothing in their homes anyway. But they would say, well, get rid of that table or get rid of that cupboard. I mean, it was... Yeah. It's all that stuff. It's a real eye-opener.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And then obviously one of his most famous pieces of work is he wrote I Bob Sy'n Ffyddlon.
Definitely, as a hymn.
Yeah, in terms of the hymns, yeah.
I mean, that's as popular today as it ever was.
It is.
But having said that, it's no longer in the hymn book.
No, but we still play it on the rugby field.
That's right.
Yeah, and sing it. So
they're keeping it going.
People haven't forgotten about it.
When the Lion was going in Dolgelly, of course, it was 9:30, closed tap in those days. But around about 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, the chap used to get up in the corner, and then we used to have about an hour solid singing, all hymn singing, by the way.
Yeah.
And of course, occasionally, they used to sing I Bob Sy'n Ffyddlon. And I used to be there, and I used to feel really guilty. I used to think, I was thinking of Uncle
Knew you were good.
If my uncle is looking down on me here, he'll be shaking his head like...
Yeah, looking at you drinking beer. God,
Yes, and singing his hymn.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, thank you for sharing that with us. I don't know whether we move on to Mary Dilwyn now,
right, yes.
Colin, if that's okay, because she's quite an interesting character as well in terms of being quite, I don't know, ahead of her time, perhaps.
Yes, she lived in Tinnacoid, the same place as Lady Chetwynd, but obviously prior to her. And she came up with her husband, Mr. Reverend Welby. Whether he was the vicar here or not, I don't know. But she was the first female photographer in Wales, probably in Britain. And she was part of a well-known family, the Dilwyns, in Swansea. Wherever you go in Swansea, there's Dilwyn Road, the Dilwyn Arms, Dilwyn Pub, all over the place. And her family were industrialists. They owned the pottery, Swansea pottery, zinc works, steel works. They were chemists. They were Quakers as well.
So what brought them up to Arthog? Do you know?
I don't know.
No.
Not yet. No, but anyway, she died here in Tinnacoid. And she was the first lady to take, I know it sounds crazy today, a photograph of somebody smiling, as a young lad smiling.
Oh, yeah, and it's so unusual at the time.
Yes, they were mostly like this, weren't they?
Yeah.
Very stern and, the first snowman, she took the photograph of the first snowman.
Again, something we wouldn't even think of.
And she was related to Fox Talbot. I think her father was the first cousin to Fox Talbot, who was the pioneer. And of course, Port Talbot, you all know about that.
Yeah.
So they were a very influential family.
Two families.
One was an MP for part of Swansea. And another, again, one of the family, Dilwyn, she ran a zinc works, but she was never accepted as a woman. She used to wear a trilby hat and smoked cigars going around. Yeah. But she did it very, very well, apparently. Anyway, she died here, and she never took any photographs up here, unfortunately.
Oh, did she not?
No.
I was going to say, because you'd expect up here in the landscape with the flowers, and the mountains and sea.
Women weren't accepted as artists anyway, and certainly not as just pioneering photographic art. So she found
and the photographs at the National Library, there's an album.
They're in the National Library, yes.
If somebody was interested in seeing those.
There's Listinum collection in there, in an album.
Yeah. Wow.
Which we hope to go to and get some photographs to put on the wall here.
So that would be part of the display as well.
Yes, I think one is of a self-portrait of herself.
Oh, lovely.
Which would be interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Another individual, and I don't know whether you want Colin or Terry want to talk about this man, but John Williams, the composer.
Yes.
I don't know whether he lived from 1740 to 1821, so a little bit earlier again.
Yes,
now.
much earlier again.
Yeah.
And he lived in a house, he was born in a house just above Arthog here. And it was the time of the Great Freeze throughout Europe, from Sicily in the south to Iceland in the north. The whole area was frozen, year in, year out. Harvests were bad. And he was born, he was known as John Williams. Johan Rhagfyr was his bardic name. He was born in December, on Boxing Day. And they didn't expect him to live. There wasn't a church in Arthog at the time, so they wrapped him in a fleece. Can you imagine? In a sheep's fleece. And took him down to the church in Dolgellau. And he was christened there to give him the best chance of going to heaven. Everybody believed in those days, didn't they? That was part of the course to go to heaven. But anyway, he did survive, and he lived till he was 81. And he was very productive music. He took, the first trade he did was as a hatter, which his parents, they were made hats. Remember the old Welsh hats? Out of beaver skins. They used to import the beaver skins into Barmouth and then travel them up and then make the hats. They were the expensive ones, but they also used wool, and felt hats as well. And so he did that. But then the wool merchants used to come from Shrewsbury, and they could see that this chap was quite talented. He could already read and write. So they gave him...
How old was he then? Was he...
I think he was about 10 or 11, 12. And they gave him a scholarship to go to school, to Shrewsbury School, which was quite a well-known and established school then, and they probably funded that as well. So off he went, and he learned to play the German flute, it was called, which I think was like this, not like that. It's like this. And he was very good at that, and he played the trumpet as well. There weren't too many pianos around, I don't imagine, in those days, or organs. Anyway, he set to, and he wrote, he was very, very prolific music composer, and he wrote, I think, about 90 hymns, of which we've revived some. Some are in the Canaan Free.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
There's two.
So they're still sung. And we revived one or two, didn't we? We sang them here.
I was going to say the video of the choir, that was one of John Williams'.
Yes, that was one of the, he wrote about 20 anthems, and that was one of them. And that was performed regularly in Bodlediad Chapel, church.
And one is called Arthog. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a tune called Arthog.
Yeah.
Yes.
And lots of other locations.
Yes, Basra.
Yeah.
Peru.
We don't know why.
No idea why.
No.
So I must go back to the National Library, where I found a lot of his music. I found at least 20 of these strange names, strange titles like Peru and Basra and
New York,
Philadelphia and New York, yes. Yeah, Greenwich, Birmingham, Swansea.
So there must be something.
Yes.
Some connection somehow. Or...
Newspapers were around at the time.
That's true.
So they must have fascinated him enough to commit himself to writing some music about them. He
must have been quite interested in geography then.
Yes.
And then he was buried in the church in
Bodlediad. Yes.
And
Just outside the main door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you went there, you'd see his gravestone there.
Yes, you can see it's a flat stone.
Oh, okay.
But he also did an England, which is on the wall on the entrance to the church there, which he writes about the surgeon who predeceased him.
Okay.
He wrote that as well. So there he is lying there, and his writing is on the wall, because he was a poet as well. But they say not such a good poet as he was the Prif Cerdd, the chief musician of Wales.
Yeah.
He was known as the Handel of Wales.
Extremely talented.
Very talented guy. Yeah.
Wow.
But he also taught in schools, because musicians weren't paid a lot.
No, so he had to have another job on.
But he wrote gavottes and minuets and so on for the nobility around the place.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this really, the purpose of finding out all this information about these influential people is because you want to display their names and information about them in the village hall specifically. Yeah. And you're planning that project at the moment and then looking for funding to be able to execute it, really.
Yes.
And that's really important in order to, remember.
And what I'd like to do with his music, by the way, is to get somebody to play the music on the flute of the instrument which he knew about, and to record it and play it as background music, because it's quite listenable, as you could hear earlier on. It's quite listenable music.
Yeah,
it may not be Handel, but
that was a piece of scripture at Christmas time.
Yeah, ac yr oedd yn y gwlad honno.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
So the choir's been busy then singing his songs.
Yes, and we could do a bit more on that.
Definitely.
I think, as well.
And I was saying maybe a CD or some sort of recording would be good.
That they could hold, so we did know his music and hear it.
Yeah.
Never mind talk about it and see it. We could listen to it.
Yeah. Fabulous. Right, looking more to the present now then, what is Arthog Community like these days, and how, what sort of things go on, and tell us a little bit about the community.
Well, we both don't live we live up the road now.
Yeah,
in
of course,
But we come down regularly, and it is a vibrant community. Many activities going on in the hall here. This is the hub of it all.
Yeah.
And there are concerts, there are lectures given, there are social evenings, which we attend, don't we? Yeah. Yes, I would say it's quite lively here. Yeah.
It's great.
Everything we hold here, everything they hold, is always packed out. It's well attended. Yeah.
I mean, it's changed beyond recognition. I was a boy here.
Yes.
I mean, you could kick off with agriculture.
Yeah.
I mean, now basically you've got 2 farmers are running all the farms in Arthog.
Right. Yeah.
And
So
then, of course,
bigger farms and
Where there used to be, say, 10.
Where they used to be tiny, yeah.
10,
The farm
no, 10
the
farms.
farmhouses have become summer houses.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, at the end of the day, they were scratching a living 70 years ago. I mean, now they need a big unit, and that's how you end up. The school my father went here, I forget how many pupils. I think there were about 70 kids here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, eventually it got closed in 1964, I think it was, when they opened a larger school in Fairborn. There's that about it. There were 3 chapels and a church when I was a boy here.
There aren't enough people.
They were never, I mean, I don't know, looking at the big one on the hill coming down, I mean, there's a possibility that when the quarry was going 60 or 70 years before that, in the middle of the 1850s,
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know how many people.
No, that's
I
right.
mean, so,
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, the population numbers,
Yeah.
that's changed, obviously. And of course, today, I mean, even the Church of England, the little church over the bridge as you came over, I mean, that's under threat. So that's another change. The other changes I well remember is the terrace, for example. In the terrace, when I was a boy, there was one English person there, right? Today, you've got one Welsh person there. But having said all that, as far as the community is in Arthog here, it's still very lively, and the people who have come in, be it they're from away, you know, they've done a
They
lot.
contribute.
Yeah, they contribute.
And I mean,
Yeah. The problem is,
I'm talking about Arthog. It's not the same. I mean, I come from Llanelli. It's exactly the same situation.
Yeah.
Exactly. Everything that's going on there now.
Yeah.
I mean, the English people have come in, you know, and they've contributed to it. I mean,
the problem is,
I mean, the
supporting
thing,
the
I always
community.
think in all of this that nothing stands still. Time marches
Yeah.
on, things change. You know, I've heard people talk about, you know, somewhere like Festiniog, and some of the old chapel goes, how many chapels are closed? They don't think back and think there was 10,000 people working in the quarries there.
yeah.
So that doesn't happen today. So, you know, so we live in constant change and things change, and sometimes it's difficult to accept. But I mean, you have to.
Yeah, move
It
with the
doesn't make
times.
sense not to, does it?
No.
The people who come here, of course, are not of breeding age, shall we say.
Yes.
So the schools close, don't they? And,
Yeah.
you know, you
That's
don't get
what
any
you see, isn't it?
youngsters. It's mostly middle-aged and above.
But it is good to hear that the community is still thriving, though.
Yes.
There's a lot going on
Absolutely.
here, and everybody who
Yeah.
lives here is contributing, which is
Yeah. They have
extremely
a carnival, they have
positive.
an annual carnival,
Yeah.
which is very, very popular.
Oh, really?
And they hold that outside.
In the summer?
Yes, yes.
Fantastic.
And they make do with, they could do with a PA system, really,
Yeah.
to run that properly.
Yes.
But that
I'll
goes
tell you,
really
as you think about this, when we were pupils in this school, we used to have Eisteddfods here and concerts. And then the stage was outside there. It was just there was a bit of a veranda.
Yeah.
And it was only planks,
Yeah.
quite long. Well, they were the length of this room.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
we put the stage up to kids.
yeah. Well, it wouldn't be
We'll
allowed
never be
to
allowed to do
We've
that
got the
these
health and
days.
safety today, you know. But,
if you're sent to prison.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, fabulous.
and that's where most of us first got on the stage as well.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Eisteddfods are still going, though.
Yes.
Still going strong.
With your
and-
knees
Yeah.
knocking together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, lovely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Colin and Terry. We really appreciate
Pleasure.
your time. And this episode is linked to our special quality of community cohesion, which is extremely important in Eryri.
Yeah.
So your contributions today have definitely enriched our knowledge, and hopefully
Good.
you will be able to display
Yes.
all of these people and information
Yeah.
about them in the future at
Well,
the hall.
Yeah, funds willing, we'll
Yeah,
get there.
definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Diolch yn fawr.
Yeah. Croeso.